Joining us now on Skype from Edo State is the Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice and Senior Advisor, Corruption and Governance to Africa Bar Association, Reverend David Ugolo. David, it's good to have you join us now. Welcome.
Thank you very much, my brother.
All right. We also have the Executive Director, Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, Akimbode Oluwafemi. Akimbode, good morning. It's good to have you join us, both of you gentlemen.
Good morning.
All right. David, let me start with you here. I know that, in fact, since yesterday, all Nigerians have been talking about the probe, the National Assembly of the NDDC, the Ministry of Niger Delta, and all of the affairs. First of all, let me ask what is going through your mind when you saw all that went down yesterday?
Again, yesterday's drama is not unusual. I'm not sure that it's something that was not expected, although it also appears today to be one important day we all remember. At least it shows clearly that evidence of how resources that were supposed to be used for the people in the region, how it is being used in the country. Again, it has also afforded the president of Nigeria opportunity to see how National Assembly operating, how the minister he has appointed is operating, how the MD of Niger Delta Development Commission is also operating. It demonstrates clearly that at this point in time, we are in a crossroad. First, who will take the action? I think this is where we have found ourselves. We have seen now whether we don't need any further investment in trying to look for where the money is going. The minister, as a matter of fact, make it more vivid for Nigerians to know when he said that over 10-point-something billion contract was given to the chairman's place. That is not a surprising story. It has always been a tradition. So where the billions are going, yesterday again provided a good drama and evidence that our resources is going to private pocket across the country. And institutions that are supposed to provide oversight accomplish it in this whole problem. And then the minister, who also was supposed to also provide oversight for the forensic audit, is also complicit. And this is the message we have been putting on for some time now. And the whole challenge is that who now takes responsibility for all this problem. And that is what we said.
All right, let's bring Akimbode Olufemi into the conversation at this point. From what Reverend Ugolo has said, the allegations laid by the Minister of the Niger Delta saying about 10.1 billion contracts were awarded to the person of the chairman of the committee. Do you think that that in any way might dent the whole process that is going on at this point?
Well, let me start by saying I don't think that will in any way, reduce from the gross corruption that has engulfed the NDDC. We've heard some humongous figures that we can almost say practically developed wings and flew away. 1.3 billion for COVID palliatives. 81 billion spent. So much money on courtesy visits and all sorts of insane activities like that. But let's put something in perspective. The NDDC that we're talking about here was created as an interventionist program for the Niger Delta specifically. What was the reason for doing that? Because it was discovered that the Niger Delta have suffered years of deprivation. They've suffered neglect, as a result of the activities of oil multinational companies. Their environments were destroyed. They cannot farm, they cannot fish. And right from unparted days, it has been the story of tokenism. The NDDC service tokenism to address those problems. And now we have seen that rather than addressing the problems, look, for every discussion, for question the minister and the managing directors answered, you see less and less of funds being directed to the original purpose of the NDDC itself. And for me, that's a sad story. You find an NDDC that gave staff 1.something billion palliative and possibly zero to communities that institution was originally created to serve. You can see that what they're doing is not development but allotment. We gave contrast to your community, So it's a way of showing patronage. And as somebody said, at that probe, that there were actually contracts that were jobs and money for the boys. I think we should dig deeper. I don't even think that approach should end with that what happened yesterday. I must say this very clearly, that while we, a nation that have not lost our sense of shock, I mean, it is very clear that this government, people that are elected or appointed as leaders are taking us for granted, and that people need to actually react appropriately to bring people to account for the gross corruption that is currently going on. All right. In NDDC.
All right, Reverend Ugola, let me bring this to you right now. A lot of debate has been going on, even on social media, where people within Niger Delta are now saying that the NDDC has obviously become a conduit pipe where monies are siphoned to public pockets. Do you think the NDDC has outlived its usefulness, where it has to be refurbished or unbundled, or something else needs to come up to replace the NDDC? Or you just feel there should be a reform or something of the NDDC?
This is not a new story, my brother. And I think that there is nothing that is happening today that has not been happening in NDDC. And those who are calling for the scrapping of NDDC, I don't think they are, it's a good recommendation. NDDC is not the problem. The problem is those operators. It's the civil servants that are there. It is the politicians. It is the institutions that are supposed to strengthen oversight. NDDC is not the problem. Today, we have anti-corruption agencies, and those anti-corruption agencies were created because of problems like this that is happening in NDDC. When you see what is happening in EFCC, would you say that is NDDC problem? So it is an institutional crisis we are experiencing in the country. And because we live in a country where there's a patron-client culture and the rent culture that politicians depends on. So it's not about NDDC. NDDC as an institution, if it is properly run, it will help achieve its goal. But patron-client culture in the country makes it impossible to happen. So if you don't do the right diagnosis, you will not be able to prescribe the right drug to cure the problem. So what the federal government under President Buhari is currently doing is that the right diagnosis was not carried out. So the prescription he has applied in addressing the problem in NDDC will not solve the problem. For instance, in the response of the call of the crisis of corruption in the NDDC, the president decided to say that, look, I want to initiate a forensic audit. Anywhere around the world, that is the best thing anybody could do, whether in America, whether in Britain. But what the president failed to do was that he puts, it's like we live in a room and an armed robber lives with us.
So your thought at this point, let's bring Olufemi in now to bring his final submission. The Reverend Ugola is saying that the NDDC is not the problem. That the persons putting who are expected to understand the issues around the NDDC and channel solutions are seemingly the problem. How do we move from here now, seeing we are at the crossroads?
Well, I agree with him, but not totally. Frankly, NDDC was created by Olusegun Obasanjo administration, and it was almost like independent and reporting to the presidency. Then Yaradua came and created the Niger Delta Ministry. What is the mandate of the ministry and what is the mandate of the NDDC? There are some institutional issues that we have to look at here. Why am I saying this? NDDC budget is about ×3 or ×4 of the ministry that is supposed to supervise it. Now, when you have a minister of the Niger Delta, the minister of the Niger Delta thinking first about how to these are core issues. I mean, even if you put the right person now, so to say, in the NDDC, how about the minister that is a government appointee, an appointee of the president, who, as he rightly said, would want to dispense patronage to not only to its Niger Delta friends, but its other friends across the country. I think that my own take about this issue is that it is the time for General Muhammadu Buhari to actually sit up as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There was a joke yesterday, and I mean, we were saying like, okay, if it were to be before, then we'll ask people like Akpabio and the rest of them to be arrested by the EFCC. But we have seen what is going on in the EFCC itself. I think we're having a bigger problem, I agree with Mr. Ogolo, in this country today, and the president himself needs to bring orderliness, brings, I mean, a sense of urgency to how things have degenerated in this country. That's the point we have now.
Let's begin with you, Akimbode Olufemi. Some have said that for us to tackle this issue head-on, we need to take a look at the act that instituted the NDDC in the first place, because you would recall that a lot of Nigerians raised an eyebrow when the president instituted the interim management committee, saying that it ran against what is in the act that instituted the NDDC in the first place.
Well, let me say clearly that the NDDC is well intended. And some lawyers are also telling us that it's a prerogative of the president at some point to be able to make interventions like the IMC. But historically, what we've also learned in this country, that any situation whereby you have sole administrators, there is the tendency to abuse and corrupt. Now, we have to go back, as I said, to that original intendment of the people that formed or created the NDDC, which is as an intervention program for the Niger Delta. The critical point missing has been the involvement and active participation of the communities that the agency is supposed to address. And I must stress also the participation and active independent participation of the civil society. While looking forward now, I think we need to go back to how to incorporate that into whatever reform we're carrying on from now, so that the communities that this agency was originally designed to serve will have a say and in what's going on, in the kind of development process that is being initiated, and of course, be empowered enough to be able to also expose cases of corruption where they happen.
All right. Now, Reverend Ugola, I wonder what you make of the Speaker of the House of Reps, Femi Gbajabiamila, saying that the acting MD will not appear again, especially when all the issues have not been or had not been exhausted as at the sitting yesterday before what happened.
I think the speaker was just speaking on emotionally, because it was not based on any evidence, and it was clear that the purpose of what happened could have informed his decision. And it's a human that decision.
All right. Reverend Ugola, we're having issues hearing you because of the distortion from the audio where you are. I'm hoping the technicians will put that together so we can come back to you. But let me go to Femi on Oluwafemi on this. Now, let me ask you the same question, because a lot of Nigerians were not necessarily satisfied with the speaker saying that the acting MD will not appear again when all the issues have not been addressed.
Well, you see, when you listen carefully or you watch the proceedings of yesterday, it's very melodramatic. You find out that we got to a point that I think a CSO individual was about to reel out, facts about how funds were moved, when, and to which bank. And he was, abruptly stopped and said he should submit his report. What that tells you, for us, is that they weren't going to allow him to make those documents as public as Nigerians want. We are beginning to see a situation whereby even members of the committees are being accused of having compromised themselves in one way or the other. The minister himself came out to say a percentage, about 10% or more, I don't know, of the contracts in NDDC actually goes to the parliamentarians. They themselves need to clear themselves, before Nigerians. I think this probe has started a process that shouldn't stop with the House of Representatives. I'm not even very enthusiastic about the reports they're going to get out of the proceeding that we have seen. But I say this, that this is the time for the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to be the president. There is a limit to which we can continue to take the people for granted. There is a great mistrust between the public and the anti-corruption fight of the president. And the president needs to...
And that's where I want to hinge my question on, because you would recall that when this government came in 2015, one of the things it says it was going to fight was corruption. And the international community has lauded the president for his effort towards tackling corruption head on. At this point, are we conscious of the fact that the international community is watching, and talk to us what it could do to our image?
See, first, let me talk, let's keep, the international community aside. Let's talk as Nigerians. The stench of corruption oozing out recently, be it the EFCC probe, the one between the NBC, there's a Malami versus EFCC. If the president doesn't do anything about it, it's going to suffocate this nation. We always say corruption will clean Nigeria, but what we are getting now is beyond our imagination. And clearly, when you look at it side by side, the promise that was made to us as by this government, and then also is the fact that, as you mentioned, the international community are not going to take us serious. They're really going to, the corruption fight is almost becoming a laughing joke among Nigerians and the global community. And that's why I said that the president needs to be presidential. The president needs to stand firm and reassure us that this fight is still on. There are some people still calling themselves ministers today that I don't think they should be ministers at now, because of the startling revelations we've seen, because of the lack of decorum in the way they've conducted themselves.
Okay.
You are in Niger Delta, you are not the MD of the NDDC. There are clear roles and responsibility in public service that have been breached. And I just wonder whether the president is watching this drama.
All right. Now, let me come to you, Reverend Ugolo, if you're still there. Now, Nigerians are very concerned about, because Veronica, my colleague, was asking earlier about the issues of the anti-corruption stance of the government. When it comes to following the money, when it comes to monitoring from the point of disbursement of this monies to execution, what is really wrong there? You are experienced when it comes to monitoring such kind of funds. What is really lacking? What's the missing link?
First, again, that's why I said that the NDDC is not the problem. And what's the problem is that compliance with institutional checks that are put in NDDC. For example, the issue of disclosure of assets. If the public officials that are in NDD do not have opportunity to be oversighted, then there's a problem. Then the minister himself and then the MD of the NDDC, they are all solid of conduct. And once you are able to put those institutions in place, it therefore means that the anti-corruption agency will be able to also play their role. But unfortunately, what we have in the country today, the anti-corruption agency are not working because of the patronage culture that have enveloped the entire country. And that's where I agree completely with my friend, Comrade Akibodi, that the president needs to rise up to the challenge at this point in time. For instance, all hope we expected that National Assembly was conducting this public hearing. It's obvious now from the accusation from the ministers that the National Assembly public hearing will not produce any result. And which means that at this point in time, the president needs to rise up. The president has responsibility to demonstrate to the international community, demonstrate to the Niger Delta people. Obviously, for the past 1 or 2 years, there have been violence-free situation in the
Reverend
region.
Ugolo, we have to leave the conversation here now. Thank you so much for your time. We must thank you, Akimbode Olufemi, for your time as